Just warning you, it's like a 30-second warning.
Then you want to start recording. Okay, we are live on Zoom. Tracy is going to make an announcement about the Spanish interpretation.
Bienvenidos. Si necesitas interpretación en español, por favor, haga clic en el icono del globo.
Are we gonna be able to hear that?
I just,
Okay, all right, great.
that's a sound check issue.
Okay. All right. I've been told the service isn't hard enough, that this doesn't make enough noise. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We're gonna start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Who wants to volunteer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is back. All right, go. Cynthia.
That's all there. And the flag is right there. So if you'll repeat with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right, can we do a roll call, please? Together. Here.
Mike Nichols,
Here.
Joe Roba,
Here.
Spencer Scott,
Here.
Betsy Van Dyke here, Cynthia Strecker. Here. Vicky Lewis. Here. Lonnie Lozano.
Here.
Heidi Moulton.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Everyone has the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? So. And we got, Mike moved and Cynthia second. All in favor? All right. Now it's time, a statement of conflict of interest. If anyone on the council has a conflict with anything on the agenda, now's the time to bring that up. Let us know. Anybody? Okay. Now we're gonna move to the consent agenda, which is essentially, on today's consent agenda is the approval of the March 14th minutes. Anyone move to approve or amend? Move to approve. Second, all in favor? Okay, great. Before I get into the next section, some of you have been to these meetings before, some of you haven't, but I just want to let you know that it's kind of a back and forth. So we will have a presentation, then we'll go to the council for comments and questions, and then we'll go to you all that are here in the room and on Zoom as well, and then we'll bring it back to the council. And the other thing to note is that we're going to come up on a section where you all have a chance to talk about something that's not on the agenda. Don't be offended or whatever that we don't comment on those things, but because they are not on the agenda and are public, we can't have a lot of discussion because the public hasn't been made aware that that's going to be on the agenda. So we'll take that feedback and we'll move on. It's not that we don't want to respond, it's just that Brown action all the time. Okay, anyone have any questions? Okay, so the first order of business is council member comments on an item not on the agenda. And I will say one more thing. I'm sorry, I thought I was finished. We are going to limit comments to a minute and a half tonight. We have a very beefy agenda with some meaty topics on it, and we're anticipating a lot of people want to have may have something to say. We want to get to everyone, so we're going to limit it this time to a minute and a half. Debbie has a timer. Oh, and then there'll be either a noise or a hand raise or something to indicate that you are 30 seconds away from at the end of your time. Okay. All right, council members, anything that's not on the agenda? And you get a minute.
You know me too well.
No,
Okay.
I was teasing.
Just real quick, I wanted to, make everyone aware of a community engagement, opportunity for us and a wonderful time for the community. It's Rio Fest, which is put on every year by Monte Rio, Friends of Monte Rio. It's at the amphitheater. It's free. It's on June 15th. Lots of music and food and lots of tabling by different groups.
Joe.
Appreciation, we have a big turnout today, and it may partially be due to the efforts of a couple of community members who plastered the town with posters. One of them's here, my dear Patrick, thank you very much, and Charlene Payne is being there. Oh, there she is. So thank you both very much.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Betsy.
Russian River Pride has a Give Back Tuesday on the 23rd. Please come. Raise money for the, yes.
We, the MAC will be represented at the Fix-It Fair in Forestville on Saturday, this Saturday, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So come bring your broken stuff and get it fixed and talk to us.
Great. Anyone else? I have one thing on May, I think it's actually on Cinco de Mayo. We are having a Rio Neto history event in Rio Neto. It will go over more than 100 years of history of the Rio Neto, the river. It will be we'll have speakers at the Rio Neto Lodge, and we will have bands and music and fun. So look for us online at the Friends of Rio Neto page on Facebook.
Right.
Okay. So now it's time for public comments for items that are not on the agenda.
Yeah, there's an X on the floor, and you have to stand there so that our people at home can hear you through the meeting owl right here. So.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Dela Plata. I have 2 items. Is it okay if I take 3 minutes?
No, minute and a half. Everyone gets the same.
Good evening, council members, Supervisor Hopkins, if you're online. My name is Tony Goodwin. For perspective, I am on the council for the Lower Russian River Municipal Advisory Committee as an alternate for Casadero and Duncan's Mills. I'm also the Chief Radio Officer for the Sonoma County Neighborhood Auxiliary Communication Service. I'm a volunteer firefighter for Casadero. I'm an electronics club instructor for Sonoma County Radio Amateurs Club. I want to bring to your attention something amazing that myself, Council Member Nichols, We Conduit, Executive Director Calvin Sandine, and several other tireless volunteers are doing. We're creating a redundant way for you to communicate within your neighborhoods. We have deployed infrastructure using generous grants from Supervisor Hopkins' office, other agencies, and nonprofits. We have created an overseeing organization called Sonoma County Neighborhood Auxiliary Communication Service. Through this organization of ambitious groups, we are working to standardize this form of communication throughout the county. If you are up for it, I'm willing to come to a meeting and present this ourselves to the residents of the 5th District. On another topic, the new free Wi-Fi. I'm getting, people are complaining that the splash page is creating a problem when they are driving through town. They have to turn off their Wi-Fi because it gets hung up. So if we can get rid of that splash page or talk to someone who can.
All right, thanks, Tony. Anyone else have a comment that's not on the agenda? No, would you?
We need that representative, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Lucy Hardcastle from Forestville. Thank you, council member. About that Fix-It Fair at El Molino High School on Saturday from 10 to 2. It will be indoors because they're worried about rain, so it's going to be in the gym. So remember that Fix-It Fair and Food for Thought as a plant sale on April 20th and 21st, and come buy your plants, flowers and vegetables from food for thought. So that's my.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment or? Yeah, Benny.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking like, there should be like a recycle center in town here, because there's not one for like, at least the Santa Rosa. You know, like there's just not one at all, like honestly, it would help keep the streets cleaner, and then, you know, we can put money in like, people's pockets and whatnot, again, which is nice, you know. And then I was also thinking, what if there's like some sort of program you can run for the homeless people, like if they were to clean up or something, like they could possibly get like a check once a month or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, that's really what I had to say.
All right, great. Thanks, Benny.
Cool.
Anybody else? What about on Zoom or online?
I'm not seeing any hands raised online.
Okay.
May I didn't have leave a staff item, so may I do a public comment?
Yes,
I just wanted to.
minute and a half.
I don't even. The council is aware of this. I sent an email to you all, but I wanted to let the community know too, that, at the February meeting, it was discussed to do an appreciation for the folks that were on Redcom, the night of the, February 4th storm. And, the MAC did sign a letter last month commending them for it, but also this coming Tuesday, the 16th at 1:30 in the afternoon, the Board of Supervisors will be adopting a gold resolution, declaring the week of April 14th through 20th National Safety Telecommunicators Week, and also recognizing Holly Fisher, who was the dispatcher on Control 2, and the team that was on duty that night during the storm event. So you're welcome to come to the Board of Supervisors meeting in Santa Rosa and see that take place.
Right. Thanks, Debbie. Okay, we're gonna move on to our first big agenda item, which I know a lot of people have been asking about, and when this is gonna happen and how it will work. And so I'm really excited to have Sid McCauley here from the Department of Health Services to give us an overview on that program here for Sonoma County. So Sid, are you?
Just about there.
All right.
All right. So, hi, everybody. I am Sid McCauley. I'm the acute and forensic section manager at Sonoma County Behavioral Health. I've been there for almost 22 years. I'm going to be there for about 2.5 more weeks. So I will not have anything to do with implementing care court, but the person who's taking my roles, David Evans, is very well versed and will be taking over from me. And implementing is what I'm going to say actually. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about care court. It's Senate Bill 133, also called the Community Assistance, Recovery and Empowerment Act. And I think my slideshow is coming up.
Run a close blind.
But
We can stand for us.
But I can move this. Maybe we can make it smaller and put it on.
I think it's coming up.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
You think it's gonna be bright enough?
No, we got.
I can see that.
It's not good.
It's okay.
I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it. I have some printed copies that I can give people that are having trouble seeing it.
Clear and there.
All right. So I have to rearrange the screen a little bit. Okay, it's okay for me to proceed.
Yep.
And so care court is a very new framework. Really, it is, it's to really fill a gap in mental health services. I think a lot of family members, community members are frustrated with the way the current mental health system goes where, you know, someone can be put on a 5150 and voluntary hold. They might go to a hospital and then the next thing everybody knows they're back and, not wanting treatment. I mean, there are plenty of folks at Sonoma County Behavioral Health and our contractors can engage in treatment. And then there are some people who just, they don't see it as an issue that they have a mental illness. They don't see it as a problem that they're unhoused and clearly not thriving. So Care Court is really to fill that hole. It's to provide community-based behavioral health services to folks who have untreated psychotic disorders. And it is very specific about that. So if there's somebody who like has a major depressive disorder and won't get out of bed and clearly need treatment and don't want it, but they don't have a psychotic disorder, they don't meet criteria for Care Court, from what I understand. It is a civil court process. It's not a criminal court process, so there's no crime involved. And that, so there aren't also like, you know, people that go to jail if they don't comply with Care Court. It really is, but it does connect people to court-ordered treatment. And then the court-ordered treatment is for 12 months, and then it can be extended for up to 24 months. So this is really about preventing people from ending up in locked facilities, in incarceration, you know, in jail, really in the least restrictive community settings, but making sure that we're wrapping services around that. So of course, evidence does demonstrate that people with serious mental illnesses can be served in community settings as long as they have the right support, including, you know, psychiatric services, medication services, case management services, therapy services, everything that folks sort of need wrapped around them, just making sure they're getting the resources that they need, et cetera. And of course, psychiatric hospitals and conservatorships are sort of short-term solutions. So and people don't like it, right? So when we put people in voluntary treatment, they sometimes just won't sort of embrace getting better because they're being told to do it and they don't want to be told what to do. Care Court is sort of a lower level intervention of, and the way they sort of designed it is really to provide a lot of support so that it feels like a supportive intervention rather than being told what to do. So I am sorry, I'm like trigger happy with this thing. So again, when people have historically suffered on the streets or had avoidable incarceration, really it's a much better alternative to treat people in the community. And it can be appropriate in a lot of different times. Following short-term hospitalization, if somebody is arrested, they could be referred. If they end up in the ER, they could be referred. They could be safely diverted from a criminal proceeding. It does, the intention is to preserve self-determination. So eligibility, 18 years or older. There does have to be a diagnosis by a clinician of a what's called a schizophrenia spectrum disorder or other psychotic disorders. So that means, you know, people who are hearing voices, have delusions, are really disorganized in their thinking, stuff like that. So the person must be deteriorating substantially and unlikely to survive safely in the community without supervision, or at risk of a relapse or deterioration that would result in a grave disability or serious harm. And grave disability means inability to access food, clothing, and shelter. So this is So the next slide coming up is a very busy slide. And I just want to say, if that little tiny writing down here, that is a link to a whole write-up that's a really good, without having to read the law, which is really dense, just a write-up about what care court is really all about. So, so the process is, first somebody initiates care court, by petitioning a judge, and I can show you, if I can do this while I'm presenting. Goodness gracious me. Okay. I'm going to pull up what my computer is not responding to me. I'm gonna have to- Oh, okay. Stop here for a second. Oh, look at that. Oh, my goodness. And I'll show you what petition looks like. That any community member can, okay, I have to share my screen again. Don't we all love modern technology? All right. Here we go. And there. All right, so this is what the petition looks like. As you can see, it's a lot of information. It's several pages long, but anybody who has knowledge of the person can fill it out. It can be a spouse, it can be a roommate, it can be a licensed clinician, it can be someone from the ER, it can be someone from the Human Services Department. It can be anybody, really, who has knowledge of the person and is able to fill out this form. And sorry, I should like reduce this a little bit so you can see more of it at the same time. So yeah, this is sort of the list of the folks who can fill out the form. And then, like I said, it's pretty long forms. So I'm gonna, and you can find this online as well. It's just on there on the website, on the care court website. I'm gonna go back to you with that one. Here we go. All right, so it's coming. There we go. So after there's this petition, if the judge agrees that they meet criteria, then there's a clinical evaluation ordered by the judge. And then the behavioral health clinician will evaluate the person. And of course, this is after a reasonable likelihood of meeting the criteria is found by the judge, right? So, but then the behavioral health clinician, makes the diagnosis, says what's going on clinically. The judge also appoints legal counsel, public defender, and then also there can be a care supporter. And the idea again is to really have this feel like they're being advocated for as well. So somebody who's like helping them to meet their needs in this process. And then, once the evaluation is done, at that point, the behavioral health clinician and we in behavioral health can talk to the person and say, you can work with us and you don't have to go through this care court process, and we can report that back to the judge. They're like, yeah, I don't want to be in court. I just want to accept treatment from you guys. Then that can happen. So there is choice along the way. Once the court accepts the participant, then a care plan is developed, and it's developed with the participant, with the court, with the supporter, so that everyone agrees what the treatment plan is going to be, and then that's sort of what's monitored and followed, for the rest of the time, for the rest of the 12 months, for the 24 months. You know, the court will hold regular, meetings with the participant to make sure everything's on track. And then if everything's on track after 12 months, it ends, and then it might be extended to 24 months. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. So as I was saying before, it does apply only to a small distinct group of adults struggling with undertreated or untreated psychotic disorders. It does differ from mental health conservatorship. It doesn't include locked settings or long-term involuntary medications. It's all voluntary, but it's voluntary in that they're agreeing to the plan with the court. And at any time, actually, the person can say, I'm not going to do this anymore, and then the court might make a different decision. It's got this peer supporter role. And so yeah, just this last piece is that if they don't participate in the court ordered care plan, they may be subjected to additional hearings, and they may be referred to conservatorship. So there was sort of a trial period where 7 counties implemented first in California. And that started October 1st, 2023. And listed Glen, Orange, Riverside, San Diego, Stanislaus, Tuolumne, and San Francisco all implemented care courts at that time. And we're all watching them very closely to see what happens. And then we were part of the second cohort, which is the rest of the state. And we have to implement by December 1st, 2024. So we got these initial planning funds, $300,000 to just for the county as a whole, not behavioral health, but the whole county to start really planning care courts. There have been preliminary meetings with the CAO's office, us, the Department of Health Services. And then there's a work group being formed with the Department of Health Services, probation, the public defender, the district attorney, and the courts. And then we, the Department of Health Services, will also be creating stakeholder meetings for input into the plan. And then we don't actually have a model yet for how we're going to be providing services, but we will be developing a cohort along with other mental health cohorts of particular populations to case manage and provide treatment to these folks. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet. Yeah,
We're getting an interpreter laptop to like.
need to slow down.
Speak up.
Oh, okay.
Maybe slow down today. Hopefully help.
All right. Okay, sorry about that. And then more information is gonna be forthcoming as we figure out exactly what we're doing in Sonoma County. I do want to add, that's not in the slides, that that the Behavioral Health Division, the Department of Health Services, isn't getting any extra money from the state to implement care court. The courts are getting some money to implement care court. What we are getting is some bridge housing money to be able to stand up more housing for care court participants. But we aren't getting any more money for treatment and case management. I think that's the end of my slides.
Thank you. We're gonna come to council for any questions. I have a couple. When you, on that form, you talked about how anybody who has knowledge can fill out that form. Can it be, for instance, I'm gonna use Greenville as a specific example. Can it be a business owner that repeatedly sees the same person do it? As long as they fill out the form, the process will start.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that clarifies that. Not to boil it down too much, but it seems if the form's filled out, the judge accepts that, then whoever is the person that this is about really has two choices. It's court or care. Is that correct, or is that too simple?
Well, it's court or care, or they could refuse both, and then the judge may decide to refer them for involuntary treatment.
Okay, so the choices are those two things, but then they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that answers that. And then does the county have any anticipated start date where this may start in the county of Sonoma?
It has to start December 1st of this year.
Right,
Yeah, so that's,
well, by then, but it might it start before then, or no, it's gonna
I
be
doubt it.
very close to that, okay.
Just to be completely transparent, I don't think that, we've got a lot of planning to do between now and then.
All right, okay.
I have a couple of clarifications.
Vicky?
If I can.
Sure.
So I'm wondering, this untreated, psychotic, business, does that mean that they have to have had a diagnosis of some kind before? So
Yeah,
it can bring the diagnosis into play to have somebody go through this process.
right.
Okay.
And that's part of that behavioral health clinician evaluation process.
Right, although how you're gonna do it without more money, I'm not sure, but, how about, I think I saw on there that, so law enforcement can fill out the petition?
Yep,
Okay. Anyone in law enforcement?
I believe so. I think any community member can fill
Okay. And then, just another clarification, so if someone gets, the petition goes in, someone's in that process of having the plan put together, are there stages at which they have to agree, or at any stage can they say, I'm out?
it. They can say I'm out at any stage.
So even if the plan is implemented and you're 6 months down the road with the
Yes.
plan?
Yeah, there's no way of making somebody do this
Right.
without their buy-in.
Right, well, I think that that's part of the misinterpreting of what this whole process will be. I think there are a lot of people that think that, oh, well, now everybody's gonna have to take the medication, no matter what.
Right.
So I think it bears clarification.
Right, and I think that the way they really think about that at the state level is that if you put the right people around them, and we do know, and I know from personal experience, that if you do outreach and engagement and are nice, and you have resources that somebody likes, and you engage them over time, that you can be successful even with people who tell you no.
I'm sure it makes a difference.
Um,
That's
so
why I asked about the law enforcement, because
Right.
once law enforcement is inserted,
Yeah.
People's opinions change. And then the only other thing I'd like to ask is, if there are parts of this, since other counties have implemented before us, are there already models that you can put into place more quickly? I mean, in other words, you don't have to create everything from scratch, correct?
That's true.
And have we learned lessons from what the other counties have done when they're implementing?
That is such a good question. We're asking the same question. There's no data yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So no
it's like
stats to
too
show.
soon after they all implemented for us to have data to show what models are successful. What we do have a lot of experience with is providing wraparound multidisciplinary teams. So, for example, we have our forensic assertive community treatment team, or our diversion court team. We have our whole person care team. We in behavioral health, and some of our contractors have a lot of experience with doing this type of service. So that won't be new to us.
Right.
We have been in statewide meetings to hear, about anecdotally about, what's been successful for folks and not. And there seem to be sort of two different models that are, that different counties are using. One is, they go into regular services and then they're monitored in the regular services, just on a regular team we already have. And then another one is creating dedicated as sort of community treatment style teams.
Mhm.
Um, to specifically, focus on the care court cohort.
So we need the data, really.
That would be great.
Okay,
Joe.
thank you very
Joe.
much.
Thanks for that. So you said if the person opts out at any stage, they have the choice between court and care. And if they opt out of both, then it could go before, it would or could go in front of the judge. Was it would or could?
You know, it depends on the judge, right? And I think it depends how they're doing it on the judge, and do they feel like if they refer them for conservatorship, would they meet criteria for conservatorship? But these are sort of unanswered questions that we're gonna have to figure out once we get into the weeds of it.
I'm just wondering how this differs from current state. In that, how many people go in front of a judge for conservatorship now? And do you think that will fundamentally change and increase dramatically as a result of this?
That is such a question mark for us, not sure, just not sure what that's gonna look like. We think it might.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my question is around, how many people who are untreated now, uncared for, will be really forced into this, judge making a decision for them. So although everything's voluntary, in the end, maybe it's not so voluntary.
right, and just to let folks know, we have about 200 conservatives in Sonoma County right now. There's another law, SB 43, that is going to significantly lower the bar for conservatorship. Sonoma County is mandated to implement that in January of 2026. It would be so great if people would instead accept voluntary treatment. But so far, the counties that have implemented fair court haven't been getting that many petitions. It's not been, you would expect them to start flooding in, but they really just haven't been.
So the rules of the conservatorship rules don't change until 26, I think.
Until January of 2026.
So it's still pretty hard to go through that process, whether they go through care court.
Yeah, true.
And you said you're not getting any additional funding from the state. Is the county considering, different funding?
We're looking at potential funding sources.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mike.
As follow-up to Vicky's question regarding, the tier one people providing some experience. Isn't my understanding, I believe my understanding is that other states have had care court in effect for several years, correct?
Oh, I do not know.
I thought New York did.
New York does.
Pardon me?
New York.
Yeah, that's why I said New York. So
Okay.
I'm wondering if we can look at what's been successful in New York to help implement, if they've had several years of experience, we should be able to learn from that experience and perhaps shorten the amount of time and money spent on planning for Sonoma County. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Betsy?
This might be a tough question. If any community member can fill out the referral form, and then the court is vetting those forms, aren't you in fact asking any community member to diagnose someone on the street who, isn't that kind of what's going on here? I mean, this person has a psychotic disorder, I say so. So obviously, a practitioner is called in and the person is evaluated, but isn't that kind of a weird place to be where you're asking community members to diagnose their neighbors?
I think so.
So it just seems odd to me that anybody would be able to fill out the form. I mean, I understand a family member who's very concerned about somebody, or someone who knows the person, a practitioner, a doctor, a nurse, an outreach worker, maybe even shelter staff, when they see the behavior, but it looks like you're kind of targeting people if it's anybody.
So, let's see.
And obviously, the court is gonna evaluate that form and decide whether, and the person will be evaluated, but it seems kind of like it could turn into a blizzard of people being referred in certain circumstances.
Can I ask a follow-up question related to that?
Go ahead and then I'll
Yeah,
say some more. about
From,
it.
maybe I misunderstood the presentation, but it sounded like there needed to be a qualifying event before the form could be received. Like, I thought it sounded like there needed to be an arrest or, no, so it's surely the form is what opens the process.
So here's what it actually says on the form. A person who lives with the respondent, a spouse or registered domestic partner, parent, sibling, child, or grandparent, a person who stands in the place of a parent, the director of a hospital in which the respondent is hospitalized, or their designee, a director of a public or charitable organization, agency or home, the licensed behavioral health clinician, a first responder, peace officer, firefighter, paramedic, emergency medical technician, mobile crisis response worker, homeless outreach worker, public guardian or public conservator, the director of the county behavioral health agency, the director of adult protective services, Indian health services, tribal court judge, or respondent. I don't know what respondent means. It might, yeah. So maybe that's someone, I don't know. So, I would have to look into that more to really
More to
answer
come
that
on.
question in a
More to
very-
come on that.
Yeah, exactly.
I have two more questions.
Yep.
So if there's no extra dollars coming to you to provide this service, how are you gonna pay the people who are doing the wraparound services? Or are you applying for federal grants or something like that?
Yeah, there more to be revealed on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
one more question. If someone is referred for involuntary treatment, where would they be going since we don't have an inpatient psych facility here?
Oh, well, we do have an inpatient psych facility here.
You mean the one on, what is it,
So I mean, we have a lot of different levels, right?
Right.
If they're referred for voluntary treatment, they can go to an ER for starters or to the crisis stabilization unit, which is a 24-hour unit, in Santa Rosa. From there, the staff refer people. We have a psychiatric health facility, 14 beds, locked facility that is, basically a psych hospital.
the one on Fulton?
No, this is out at Los Filicos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then we do also have the one on Fulton that we send people there frequently
So how many beds are there?
in Sonoma County.
Yeah,
That fluctuates. The one on Fulton, people from all over Northern California are there, and so it just depends. I think they have like 96 beds or something like that. Some of them are kids beds.
yeah, I thought a friend of mine who works in psych told me that there were maybe 10 beds that are available. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, at any given time, there might be 10 beds available.
So if there's not a bed available, would this person be sent out of county?
Yeah, then we use hospitals out in County, Marin General, or
Health aides?
yeah, all the Bates or any of them, a dozen hospitals that we send people to, yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm finished.
Oh, hold on, we still have a,
Walk me through a hypothetical, if you would please. Let's say that I am a merchant in Guerneville, and I have seen a particular person doing behaviors that I feel are very egregious and very way beyond the pale. And so I want something done about this. But I don't want to be inhumane. And this is a homeless person, so it's not like I can call their brother or their doctor or their, roommate. So, But I don't particularly wanna call the police right away because I know that can kind of go south. So who do I call? What do I do? And I'm a little, I don't wanna go out there and say, hey, buddy, you know, because this person, is very aggressive.
I have a good answer for that.
Wonderful, all right.
Another thing the county is mandated to do is have mobile crisis services countywide 24 hours a day. And so we are.
So that would be like in response.
Like in response for county. So it'll be a team that does not have to have law enforcement called before they can respond.
However, some of the folks that I have talked with about this, the merchants in particular, have said, we've got that, but it's a 2 or 3 hour wait, which is like, God knows where people will be at that point, and
So we just went from a 2-person team to like a big team. I was just.
oh, okay.
And we're hiring more people all the time to be able to stand up this 24-hour countywide service.
So do you have any, estimates, guesstimates about how long it would take this team to respond out here?
I mean, it depends where they are and what they're doing in the meantime, but you know, usually a half hour.
Okay, I mean, it takes that long to drive here, but, you know, yeah, so, okay, and
Yeah, I may have been like, you know, being optimistic about that, but you know, I don't know. We haven't started yet, so we're gonna see what it looks like.
okay. When this has been presented to us before, and it has generally been presented to my, if memory serves, as a way to provide services to a particular subset of problematic homeless people. Now, it sounds like what you're talking about is a much broader thing.
You mean care court?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be for somebody who is housed for sure, if they are, you know, really not doing well.
Yeah.
Even if they're sheltered, they could still, I mean, I think about a lot of parents I've met over the years who have, you know,
Yes.
an adult child living in their home who won't accept treatment and is like just really not thriving at all. So those folks could certainly be referred.
If it is a homeless person, would a homeless advocate be routinely called?
You mean to
Maybe just as part of the evaluation team or part of the team to come up with a plan, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we do have, you know, embedded, we work very closely with homeless advocates and also, have a housing specialist, you know, embedded in our services. We are creating through this bridge housing, I want to say it's a 72-bed facility that will be, priority, and care court folks will be prioritized for that. And then we're actually, getting another facility online as well.
So how does that
We're
work?
we're not gonna move on to the
Last
next.
one?
No, we gotta keep moving on. Because I know a lot of people have, anyone else on council? Mikey, you're up.
So hypothetical, like, say the system can get abused, say your boyfriend, girlfriend are fighting. What happens if that person's like a registered gun?
A what?
A registered gun, and they're, say in this case, they're a victim. I mean, if it gets abused, say it's wrongfully filled out as.
You mean
boyfriend, girlfriend
somebody
fighting.
petitions the court and they're just, and they're doing it to
Spite somebody.
spite somebody?
And
I mean-
they're registered gun, and they're like, what happens? And it's like, kind of like a emergency restraining order.
I think, I mean, I don't, so,
And we're gonna hold all of the
oh, right,
responses. So we're
sorry,
gonna include public
sorry, I
comment.
forgot about that, sorry.
Anyone else
Hard to shake.
in the room have, did you just hear what, Debbie was just saying? Okay, great.
And if you also could come and stand on X so that our interpreter and the folks at home can hear you also.
Anyone in the room here have any questions or comments?
I thought I heard you say earlier that it was like a schizophrenia spectrum. But it almost sounded like you were also mentioning that it could be other spectrum disorders as well, ADHD, autism. Is it all inclusive?
We're gonna have responses at the very end.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? You're up. Yeah. Oh, I know, you don't like the X, I remember. We need that.
We can't, the interpreter can't hear you.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks for listening. My name's Vicki Miller, and I have a couple questions as it applies to the conservatorship. And my background's in special education. I taught for a couple of decades, and a number of my students, previous students, now have a condition that were diagnosed with schizo disorder on the spectrum, now have a condition known as tardive dyskinesia from the medication. So one of the questions I have is, how will that be mitigated, and will people that are forced into treatment, how will they have access to legal representation during that time? I heard you speak to it for care court, but I didn't hear how it was going to go. And it's my understanding that there is no like standard for conservatorship that actually indicates that it has positive outcomes for those people who are forced into medication without agreeing to it. So my questions are more around the outcomes that I've been able to ascertain don't look like they would be favorable, and that those folks would then not be inclined to look for services in the future because of their experience having been forced into involuntary medication. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about the X. Anyone else here have any questions? What about, Tracy, what about on Zoom?
If you're joining online and would like to make public comment in the current item, care court, please raise your hand to be unmuted. I'm not seeing any hands raised online.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know a lot of people have been waiting to find out what this is all about, so.
Tracy.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to the next, oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
The result-
Okay. I was wondering, I was like.
I was wondering.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm gonna do a little more reading while I'm still here, about like okay. So as a domestic partner can certainly fill it out. If they're doing it because I think that the process is really thorough. And that's why both the judge gets the petition, it's a very long petition, it has to have a lot of information in it. And then if the judge thinks it's legit, then a behavioral health clinician has to really evaluate the person. I can't see where it would be successful that somebody, you know, would be put into care court if they didn't really have a mental health disorder. In terms of the registered gun owner part, like that's just not my area of expertise. I don't know how to answer that question at all. And then it is schizophrenia and psychotic disorders in particular. So not ADHD, not generalized anxiety disorder, not major depression. It does have to be a schizophrenia spectrum disorder or other psychotic disorder. Where there's a person is having a breach with reality in some way or another, either hearing voices, having delusions, not able to, not tracking what you would expect a normal person to track. Normal being a word I don't really like to use, so scratch that. And then in terms of the conservatorship, there are conservatorships for people with intellectual disabilities, for example, and which we don't have anything to do with, and there's LPS conservatorship specifically for people with mental health disorders. There are a lot of checks and balances all along the way. If someone is on a 5150, it's just a 72-hour hold. If they have to have a hearing to be put on a 14-day hold, that's a 5250 hearing, and they have representation from a patient's rights advocate at that hearing. If then they are referred for conservatorship, they are assigned a public defender to represent them. People can only be conserved for a year. At any time during that time, they can request a jury trial. I think anytime during that time. And then to get off conservatorship, and then after a year, a psychiatrist has to re-petition for them to stay on conservatorship, and the court hears that the public defender's involved again, and the client has a right to speak up for themselves. And then and so there's just like they get to have a lot of opportunities to prove that they don't need to be on conservatorship again. In terms of the bad experiences, some people really do, they get better and it's helpful to them. Other people, you're absolutely right. They don't like being locked up. They don't like being given the reputation they don't like. It turns them off the mental health system. And I think, the ways to counteract that are through assertive community treatment. And I think that the idea of care court is to be able to engage people in a different way that doesn't feel so coercive, and let them have a lot of say and choice in what that looks like. We'll see. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we are gonna move on to the next agenda item, which is George's Hideaway. And I know on the agenda, it said that Rhonda was gonna be here, but she's not here today, but we have, pardon? She is here?
But she's not.
Oh, okay. We have Mark, I'm not gonna say all your names, because it's a long list. Mark, Ray, Tim Miller from West County Community Services, Danielle, and Brian.
We're all here.
You're up. You're up.
Oh, no, never mind.
Yeah. One more.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh.
Good evening, council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have a conversation with you and bring you up to speed with a significant amount of work that the folks from the Community Development Commission and the West County Community Services have engaged in over the course of we've been involved in the last year and a half. My name is Brian Grant, and I am from a company called Praxis Architects. We are a small architectural firm located in Monterey. Been working here for about 30 years. Very familiar with many of the public agencies and resource agencies here. And happy to be here tonight. So very important project to jog everyone's memory. Results in 21 new units of permanent supportive housing, as well as an empowerment center and navigation center associated with addressing unhoused units. So the site, I think you all know quite well, is George's Hideaway. And what we're looking at here is a historic photograph of the building. The building was built in 1915.
And that's true of the building immediately adjacent to it as well. And something that I'll just call your attention to is you might note that in this photograph, this is the floor level, and you can see that we're a good 6 or 8 feet above grade. And sure, absolutely.
This is the microphone.
Absolutely, I'm sorry. Great. So let me restate that. So just reviewing the historic photograph here, that the ground is significantly lower than the entry level of the building. And that's an important point that will come up later in terms of our conversation. So the building is about 2,600 square feet on the ground floor, and about 1,600 square feet on the second floor. And the duplex, what's called the duplex, which is the building that's immediately adjacent to it, is about 560 square feet per floor as well. There's 2 floors. So part of the funding source associated with this project is through a funding program called HomeKey, which is something that is directed through the governor's office. And the interesting thing about the HomeKey funding program is that there's an emphasis on trying to turn around the housing and improvements as quickly as possible. And a lot of these projects are mired, as we all know, in permit issues, and those can be very difficult and time consuming and expensive. So the program is designed to try and expedite that. In this case, we're a very challenging site, and there's a lot to deal with and a lot of upgrades to deal with. So in light of that, the funding source basically provides a series of criteria that the project needs to meet that allow for an easier permit review process. And the most significant one of those constraints on this particular property is a limitation on the expansion of coverage. So meaning part of the reason I was reading to you the list of square footages per floor, it has to do with how much more we can expand. So the goal of the exercise, as I mentioned, is to identify these 21 new units of housing, as well as the commercial navigation center. So through the process of working with the planning division at the county, we determined what the maximum amount of expanded coverage could be and identified that as a new housing opportunity that is, and we'll look at the site plans, but is located immediately behind the building in the kind of flat area. I'm assuming many of you might be familiar with the property. But in addition to that, there were a number of regulatory things that needed to happen. The property that we now know it to be, when we started, it was 3 properties and had a public street that ran through it. So there was a process that had to do with vacation of the right of way, which is a very lengthy process through the county's surveyor's office, and merger of the parcels. So all of that has been, we've been working on that for the last year and a half. And so there are also challenges associated with the site that have to do with utilities. So it's been a very long time since this property has had significant usage, and the proposed usage from the fire marshal's perspective drives the requirement of a new fire hydrant. And so the new fire, while there is water that is to the site that is provided in a 4-inch main, that needs to be upgraded because the building code requires that there be a minimum of a 6-inch main to the fire. So now we're in a situation where we need to upgrade the fire water service to the property. There is also a lack of electricity at the property, so less than 100 amps of power are there, and we're in need of more like 800. So that's a conversation with PG&E as well, and we're in the midst of that. And in addition to that, there's a wastewater issue in that the property is currently served by private septic, and the private septic, there's not enough land area on the property to handle the usage that would be proposed. So because of that, the project is in the process of connecting to the Western River County Sanitation District sewer line that is approximately 450 feet toward Guerneville from the property. So that's also part of what happens with this project. So you can imagine, in light of the things I just described, above and beyond complications associated with putting in 21 units of housing and this navigation center and empowerment center, we also have all these utilities. So in light of trying to go through with all of that information, as I was mentioning, The site has also had some other potential, some other interesting compromises and difficult conditions, namely having to do with the fact that the property has been filled over time. So, what you may know is this is from the thirties. And you'll note that that's the building, this is what is now the highway, is currently, in this image is a railroad. And again, what's interesting to note is how low the ground is with respect to how high the floor level is. That building in the background is what I was referring to earlier as a duplex. And what's also interesting in some of these historic photographs is that there are small cabins that are on the hill behind the building that were rental cottages that were associated with that facility as well. So we had an opportunity to spend some time with the John Stewart collection at the library in Santa Rosa, or in Sonoma, not one part of Santa Rosa State. So we got a lot of this information came from there. So you're looking at, there's another one of the cabins that was there that is no longer there. And this is what was the exterior stair to the second floor. And the second floor is fitted with 6 lodge rooms that are single rooms that are small, but they each have their own, they have an adjoining bathroom that shares between two of the rooms. So it's a total of 6 rooms that are accommodated on the second floor. And let's just see. So again, another shot just of up closer to understand what relationship the building has with the ground. So moving forward, this is a more current shot. This is from 2010, and you can see that the ground is now basically at the floor. So when that occurred, essentially there was not proper placement of the fill, and above and beyond that, the building was not properly built. So the foundation was not extended to, how to carry the building through that level of fill. And so through the geotechnical investigation that has occurred since we've been involved with the project, it's determined that all that material is subject to failure in geotechnical event or in a seismic event. So it all essentially has to come out and be recompacted. And we're looking at a depth of between 6 and 8 feet in some cases. So it's not a small lift. So in addition to that, the building itself has suffered a bit from not having been occupied, and also is significantly substandard for today's construction based on the fact that it was built in 1915. So ultimately, what will happen on the property is that the building will be required to meet fire safe standards, which means we can have the exterior building surfaces that are hardened so that we have non-ignitable surfaces, unlike or the siding that's there now. The roofing will have to be replaced. The second floor, as you can see here, is a series of dormers that result in, as I was mentioning, 6 sleeping rooms. That is not quite enough room for what we need to accommodate based on the coverage limitations that we're building over the second floor. So we have come up with an alternative that basically provides 9 rooms on the second floor, but the 9 rooms on the second floor means tearing all of what is the second floor off. So now we're at a point where we don't have a foundation, we don't have a roof, we don't have a second floor, and all of the doors and windows and all the exterior walls need to be reworked for upgrades for all sorts of conditions. So again, this is the building that we all know. So this is what's coming forward and has been approved by planning, which is that there's a building that occupies the same footprint, but has a number of things that are significant upgrades. One of which, as I mentioned, the building will be connected to the sanitary sewer system. And that nearest location is approximately 450 feet away. And while it can be made to work at the elevation that it is now, it would be significantly better if the building were slightly higher, because there will be more fall to the location that is existing drainage. So as part of having to rework the whole site in terms of upgrading the soils conditions, we also have the opportunity to rework the site in terms of grade. So we can actually elevate the building a couple of feet, and that also improves the disposition of the accessibility requirements on the rear half of the property where the additional units are located. So This is a proposed view from the rear. You remember the images of the stairs we were looking at earlier. We're interested in continuing the language of the existing condition. That was really part of the conversation with the planning division. So what I'm showing here is a site plan, and indicated on this plan really is where the buildings are to be disposed and the organization associated with the parking. So the parking loading is established by county standards, and you may all know also there's a very large tree right here. And there are a series of redwoods here as well. And the Caltrans right of way is along this line. It's hard to do this. So the trees are essentially all in the Caltrans right of way. The duplex that we were looking at in the images sits here currently. So the way that the site has been designed to work is that it's a one-way in, one-way out. So folks would enter in this way with a vehicle and come around the backside of the building and then ultimately either park or depart a driveway on this side. And the reason for that is because the sight lines associated with this location are so much safer than they are with this tree. So that the concerns from Caltrans perspective is that we want to make sure we have safe entry and exiting. So that brings up another point, which is that we have a number of regulatory agencies that are involved with the permitting associated with the project. Caltrans is a player in that there needs to be a new water line and a new sewer line run down the Caltrans right of way. So that's an endeavor that we're in the process of. The application has been submitted to Caltrans, and they, I believe, just submitted their first round of comments today. And we also are working obviously closely with both the sanitation district and permit Sonoma associated with the wastewater, as well as the building permits and the grading and drainage. So what you can see here, this is the highway as it runs along here. And this area will remain landscaped and all the trees will remain. And this footprint of the building is basically the same as the footprint of the existing structure. And we're parking around it. And the large redwood trees that are immediately behind the building are also to remain. And they're in the rear portion of the property. There is an existing rock berm, which is located right here. And it has somewhat to do with the drainage that comes down through the topography. And there is a drainage culvert and a swale that runs through the property that runs along like this. And you may have noticed when you're on the highway, there is a large drain inlet right here that allows water to go from the site down out and drain into the river in terms of stormwater. In our case, we're reworking much of that and we're replacing that culvert. And in addition to that, we are building a total of 12 units that are out here that are around the courtyard. Each of the units is in the neighborhood of 200 square feet. Each has a kitchenette. Each has its own bathroom and shower. So the in addition to that, there is 2-story. So the intent is to build the structures to emulate the roof line and the shape of what is the existing building and take on the same kind of character, with the idea that the second floor balcony is covered with an overhang roof and the first floor is naturally covered because of the floor above it. So to give you an idea about what so this is for reference sake, this is a depiction of what is the existing floor plan, both the ground floor and the second floor. So the ground floor is here, and what is the original structure line of the original structure is this simple rectangle. And there were a number of additions that were put on over the years that were not particularly well made, that ultimately we are using as credit to expand what is the housing area behind the building and increase our buildable footprint. But I'll also call your attention to the configuration of the second floor and the way that the sleeping rooms work with the dormers. And in this case, this second floor is roughly almost 1,000 square feet less in square footage than the first floor. And so that is area that we need very, very desperately because we need to provide as many units as we can based on the coverage that we've got. So,
There we go.
Okay, and I apologize, it's a little bit hard to read. We are in the process of negotiating with the county about a building permit. But generally speaking, I can walk you through the plan here associated with what this is. This is the ground floor. And the highway is down here. And there's a large room that is made up of two rooms that are dividable with a sliding wall. And on one side is the navigation center, and on the other side is the empowerment center. And they are fronted by a kitchen, not a full commercial kitchen, but more like a catering kitchen that will allow for larger gatherings to happen in this one room if the wall is retracted. During the daily use, it would typically be two rooms, and those rooms are fronted by, there's an office here and an office here. There's an entry from the side is basically here. Oops. So there's an entry lobby at that location that the tenants will have access to. I believe after hours that is associated also with the, there's a room immediately adjacent to it that is a shared laundry room. So from there, there's a restroom, storage room, a flexible office that is to be utilized in part by the folks from West County Health Centers, provide services there as well. There's a storage room with utility sink and hot sink, another working room for folks that might be interested in getting online, and a couple of working desks there and another restroom. So the bulk of what is the entirety of the first floor is all dedicated to the navigation and conference center. So the first floor of what is the studio units that are located out behind the building, as I mentioned, are disposed around the courtyard. And the buildings are two-story. So what you're seeing here are the individual units. So the ones that are slightly light blue are fully accessible for compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act. And the ones that are white are upgradable to, and also mainly accessible as they are designed as it is now. So we also have a smaller unit that is here. That is,
Excuse me for a second. I don't know if we need to have a
Okay.
detailed description of every single room,
Okay.
but an overview
Absolutely.
would be great.
wonderful, thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Okay, so generally speaking, there's the rooms on the ground floor. And the second floor of the main building has 9 additional housing units that are disposed around one central corridor. And the second floor of the studio area looks very similar to the first, but it's also by a second floor walkway. So generally speaking, get the idea. Ultimately, the main building is being utilized to its capacity based on square footage, and there are some new units that are being installed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. And I appreciate the work.
Sure. No, of course.
Was there anyone else who was gonna? Is this the only person who was presenting on this subject?
Are the others here just to answer questions? The other folks?
We are available for us.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, then great. We'll go to council for questions or comments. Joe?
So are you scraping the building entirely?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never quite got to it.
Yeah, well, what's left is really the first floor frame. You know, and at that point, so we've had a fairly, I'm sorry, is this question and answer back? Because I can.
Yeah.
This is fun for question and answer.
So to your question, Joe, ultimately, through the conversation with the estimator and the contractor who were in discussion, we looked at, a high level of interest in trying to keep the building. And the farther the county pushed us into this situation where we had to take over the second floor and expand it to include as much housing as we could, one thing led to another, and the next thing you know, there was so much of it that was being removed that it didn't make any sense. So with advice from the general builder and the contractor, estimator, they're of the opinion it probably saves the project the better part of $200,000 to tear the building down as opposed to trying to rebuild.
How long did it take to get to that conclusion?
Well,
I'm just wondering.
yeah, well, and I would say the thing that was the complication associated with that was the original submittal that went into the planning department had all the housing out in the back, and there was no occupation of the second floor. And it was only through the environmental review that we were forced into putting so much on the second floor. It caused a complete review.
Okay.
And revision of what was the second of the main building. So it took a while. Let's put it that way.
And I understood, you said it would be helpful if it was raised for the sewer, so you're raising all those as well.
And not just the building, the whole site. So as it is now, the site slopes from the front toward, or from the back toward the street. And it's in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 feet. And so what's gonna end up happening is that material, the soils engineers have the opinion the material can stay on site, it just needs to be properly compacted. So instead of it sloping down, it will be more of a flat plane, which brings the front up. And so that's an advantage for the sewer as well.
Right, great. Mike?
I think we spent $960,000 for the property, countywide. And it looks like we're looking at between $7 and $10 million to, replace the project. Am I correct with my assumption? Looking at $7 and $10 million?
I would say that's pretty correct.
Yeah. I just had some experience with some of the clean power with the remodeling of that facility up there on E Street in Santa Rosa, so. Yeah, it's a sizable investment. I'm wondering where the money's gonna come from.
I can speak to that. My name is Ray Tovar.
You gotta get on the X.
If you did it, I have to do it right. My name is Ray Tovar. I'm with the Sonoma County Community Development Commission. And I've been working with Brian and everybody else who's here representing the entire group. And we have, in addition to the home key funding that we received from the state, that was $6.2 million. We have received commitments from the Department of Health Services, from Measure Out to cover some of these expenses. We have the county itself, the board of supervisors, when the acquisition occurred and when the application was approved to be submitted to the state, they committed funding from different sources for this particular purpose. At that point, as we all thought, was going to cost $6.3 million in addition to the acquisition of the $960,000 that we already spent. But as Brian just explained, all these issues that we have experiencing have ballooned the cost. And we were lucky, at least at this point, we're fortunate that we have enough funds to complete it as it stands. We don't know what else we're going to encounter, but at the moment, the way that it was shown to you, we can build it.
I'm just wondering if it would be more cost effective for the county to just say scrap it and look at another location.
Yeah.
At this point, I think it will be very difficult. We have a very, very tight schedule from the state to complete this. If we don't do this within the timeline that they put on us, and as Brian said, the purpose of Home Key was to house people immediately. Some projects in the location where they are able to turn the hotel within 6 months or so.
Yeah.
We can't do at this site.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm curious about the timeline. I missed part of that. So what is the timeline for?
With the award that we got from the state,
Yeah.
we are required to have the project mostly completed by December of this year.
Wow.
And it's ambitious, it's ambitious, but that's, it's actually, it speaks to the partnership that we have with all the county departments. The planning department, the Permit Sonoma has been a tremendous supporter of this project, and they're helping us to speed it up.
Who's the contractor?
At this point, we are talking to GMH builders.
They're the same folks that built the health center here.
Yes.
So you're soliciting several bids for contractors, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
To move on to when it is going, I'm wondering how many people can be served during the day in the empowerment center, navigation center? How many people are you planning to And will people be able to come in and do a little laundry or take a shower? Or get warm or have a cup of coffee?
That's a great question, and I'm gonna turn it over to West County Community Services. That's their forte.
Yeah.
There's a number of the Danielle Danforth is the Director of Housing and Homeless Services, and Christy Davila is the head of our Counseling and Behavioral Health, who runs the Empowerment Center, the Pure Mental Health Center that will be moved in. So there's not an exact number that we can say because you don't know actually who's gonna come, but we do know with 21 units of permanent supportive housing, there'll be a minimum of 21. Actually, there's 22 because there's gonna be an on-site manager living in the site. There's an additional housing unit there as well. The Pure Mental Health Center will be moving where it currently is in Monterey at the Teen Center, run by Parks and Rec there. That will be moving into facing from the highway, the left side of the building. And the Pure Mental Health Center, perhaps Christy can come up in a minute and talk a little bit more about that. But it's a walk-in center for people who want to talk with people who've been trained and have their own mental health issues to work with others. So there's no top-down, it's peer to peer. We have 4 of those in the county and 1 here in West County, which we're very proud of. The Service Navigation Center is a walk-in facility. One of the great things about this site is that it's on a public bus stop right on the property. I believe in a week, there's 7 free buses that stop there every day. We'll also have a shuttle to bring people there in the morning and to take them back to Gurnville in the afternoon. But the Service Navigation Center, there'll be a case manager there and a service navigator, both full-time. And their job is to work with the 21 people living there, help with them employment and get connected to services. But also, one of the main complaints, and it's justified, for many of the merchants downtown and others is there's no place for people to go during the daytime in many cases. The Service Navigation Center is not going to be a drop-in, flop-in facility, if you wish, where people just come and hang around. But it is a place where the case manager and the service navigator, or whether they come on the free bus or on the shuttle, to work on their issues and a place for them to stay. So coffee, yes. Showers, no. We already, West County Community Services raised $140,000 about 4 years ago to build a shower room at 3rd Street House, where the healthcare for the homeless is. So people take showers there every day. We're not gonna have a facility for that. Obviously, in the 21 housing units, each of them will have their own shower. We're talking about laundry. I don't know if you've settled on that yet. There's also a laundry that we paid for at 3rd Street House for that purpose.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I just have, I'm gonna burn if I don't say this, but, and don't get me wrong, I'm fully supportive of this project. I really am. I think it's gonna be great when it's completed. But it kind of burns me a little bit that, we went from 6 to $10 million, and that I bet if I polled in this room and people raised their hands and said, how many people think that would be a tear down to do this? How many would raise your hands? Like, I think everyone would probably agree with that. So why did it take us engineers and county and like just basically spend an additional $4 million on this thing, which I think most of the people in the community have got around to supporting. It just kind of a little crazy.
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't argue there's a little bit of crazy involved there. But it's you know, this community has looked for a site.
Yeah,
something like
I
this
know, oh, yeah.
For 15 years. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and this was one of them, and it's been passed back and forth. And I think we would be dishonest if we say it would have happened without Home Key. Without the $6 million from the state,
Right.
there would have been no launch pad for this project. You're right. But here's where we are. I mean, a couple of the great things is above the floodplain. We know how important that is here. It's got the bus stop there. One of the benefits to the community is going to be that, you know, Sonoma County from the state has a low-income housing requirement. And I'm not an expert on that, Ron, probably speak to it better than I can, but we need that X amount of units.
Right.
This is gonna give us 21.
Yeah, like I said, I am not opposed to this.
I understand. I'm just giving you some, it's also gonna add a fire hydrant or 2 fire hydrants, is that actually? To the community as well in that area. So it is a bit expensive, but if you divide the cost of housing by 21, and then remember there's the Service Navigation Center
Hard and the Peer Mental Health Center, the per unit cost does drop quite a bit. But I hear completely what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah, that's.
good, somebody. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Could I just ask, Chris, do you mind coming up and just talking briefly about what peer mental health is? I don't think I'm represented really well.
My name is Christy Davila. I'm the Director of Counseling and Behavioral Health. We have 4 peer centers throughout Sonoma, Paloma, Santa Rosa, and then RAC in Monterey. The peer work it's about people that have mental health struggles and they found a place in their own mental health recovery that then they are serving and supporting other people that are struggling. And the idea at our centers is to be responsive to the members that are coming in and receiving services. We provide a variety of activities and groups that are social and educational so that people can pick and choose from what we're offering to aid in their own mental health recovery. And so it is about, they don't have to engage in anything if they choose not to. They can come and just be with other people and build community and socialize, and they can also engage. There's no pressure.
All right, thank you. Any other council questions or comments? All right, we're gonna go to the public. Anyone in this room will go here first. And remember, we're gonna get the comments or questions, and then we will hold the answers until the end of all. You're up.
Am I the only one? So yeah, I have to agree with Vice Chair Nichols. This seems to have gotten way out of hand. And it, you know, all the way back to the beginning, the person who sold us the property, you know, maybe they were they knew what we were getting into. Is there any recourse there? Can we get out? I mean, $11 million, we got families leaving the area because they can't afford to live here. But we're gonna spend $11 million on something wonderful. Don't get me wrong, what you guys are doing is fantastic, and I'm fully behind it. It's just the way we got here is kind of misleading, and I think it's kind of a kick in the pants. So
Thanks, Tony.
yeah, thank you.
Anyone else here? Yes. Benny will be next.
Sorry, that's you. I just want to reiterate what's already been said, $11 million, 21 units, that's $500,000 a house. Come on, Jones, we can't do that.
Yeah.
All right, $11 million, 21 houses, $500,000 a house, that doesn't make any sense. We should be able to do it a hell of a lot cheaper than we're doing it, and maybe use that money to provide the people who give the services or give real service to the people. It just seems the economics here just don't make any damn sense.
Okay. Benny.
Yeah, I've just always kind of thought that the location is just dangerous. I mean, yeah, there are buses, whatnot that go there, but like, I mean, I've always just pictured like people just drunk, just walking down there, because it's pretty far out of town, River Road, fast cars and stuff, you know. It just, it's always worried me about that. And that's really what I gotta say. It sounds expensive too.
Right. All right, Benny, thank you. Anyone else in the room have a question or a comment? Mikey.
I was glad they mentioned John Schubert Society.
Hey, Peter.
That was interesting that you mentioned John Schubert Society. He was very much against the project for that particular building. But anyways, is there an opportunity for the community to get pieces of old growth lumber from there? And there's a big field across the street too. That's a really good location center. Another homeless shelter.
Is it worth $4 million? All right, anyone else in the room? Tracy, what about on Zoom?
There are no hands raised online.
Okay. Who wants to address oh, no.
Sorry, no, I do have a correction to what I said, and I just wanted to, I wondered when I might be able to. do
Is it
that.
quick?
It's really quick, yeah.
Do it now.
Okay, I'll stand over here. So this will answer a number of questions, I think. It does have to be one of those people I listed, putting in the petition. The respondent is actually the person with the psychotic disorder, so they can put in a petition for themselves.
Okay.
And then there has to be supporting documentation, which is either a declaration by a licensed mental health professional or evidence that the person has been in a psychiatric hospital twice, one of the times in the last 60 days. So you can see why a family member or someone might have that, but regular people on the street will not have that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know who's best qualified to answer the questions that came up from the public.
Talk about cost for housing. I was thinking that maybe to this side and also.
Cost for housing, why?
Yeah.
Well, let's give them a chance.
Good evening, I'm Rhonda Coffin, the Sonoma County Community Development Commission. So I'm gonna try to answer those questions. So we too were alarmed at the cost increase, but there was, as Brian explained, in good detail, reasons why the costs were increased, the redesign, et cetera. Affordable housing is expensive to develop, believe it or not, because most of it is built with public funds. So that's federal, state, local funds. Those come with really a number of regulatory requirements. One namely is federal Davis-Bacon prevailing wages. That ensures that every contractor, every person working on the job is paid a good wage in the area. And so that can typically drive up the cost over 30% over just a market rate building or a market rate unit. So that's just one. So there's a lot of requirements like that. We're seeing with developing affordable housing in the range of $1 million per door on average. So at 500,000, we're kind of getting a deal here, believe it or not. But when you look at the bigger picture, these 21 units of affordable housing will be affordable for a minimum of 55 years. So you gotta divide those numbers by 55 years, and those households, 21 households, will turn over many times during those 21 years and provide affordable housing for a long period of time. So those are some of the things that we think about when we're looking at the costs. And I want to say that we have a really great partner in West County Community Services, not only delivering services, but in developing this project. They are a strong partner, and we've been working very closely with them and finding the gap financing to deliver this project. And so we are very excited to get started and see folks move into this project.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, thank you guys, everyone. Thank you. Good to see it moving along. Anyway, I'll keep that on show.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move on to committee and community project reports. First on the list is governance. I think it might make more.
That one's not till D. I get the notes are at the top.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine, yeah,
Your new notes are.
I know.
Okay, so, community engagement and outreach, there's no report. Land use standing committee, did everyone, everyone read what's in there? Does anyone have any questions or comments on what's in the report and the recommendation to basically get to fix it? No? Public, anyone have a comment on that? Okay, land use. Mike, anything?
No comment.
Okay.
On the report.
Okay, land acknowledgement, we talked about governance solutions engagement. I think it might be smart here to save some time before we go through questions on the recommendation itself. Is it there, because in the recommendation, there were things like, not standing, but a working group committee, and those require some legal machinations to make happen. So maybe, Debbie, you can talk a little bit about the legal implications of the recommendation, and then we can talk about it after that.
Okay, and I believe also we have Patty, who is with one of the co-chairs who can come on and speak to, I think Spencer and Patty are the co-chairs, and you two spoke about that, and she'll come on. But I can, so the recommendation, one of the recommendations was to create a working group. And I checked with county council on whether the map can form a working group. And it would really limit the ability to have community participation if the map created a working group. All of the meetings would have to be Brown Act. It would be like the land use committee. It would be very formal and not the kind of group that was envisioned by this. So the recommendation is for the community to form, there are sort of two phases in the recommendation. So from the ad hoc. And so the staff recommendation would be to create, allow the community, encourage the community to form area-specific working groups based on the regions of the map, and people can join it up. It doesn't have to be one for each of the 7 areas. They could just sort of meld together. It could be Rio Neto and Guerneville, Pocket Canyon. Whatever comes naturally from the people that want to talk about it. And then MAC members could attend these groups as long as not more than 4 attend at any time. And as long as you don't then discuss those things with your fellow MAC members. So, and MAC members are absolutely encouraged to talk to each and every community member that has any interest independently on their own. There are no restrictions around that at all. And then you can bring that back. We can have agendized times to have group conversations about that. But that's what will give the community the best opportunity to just have these informal conversations and start to, I think at one of the ad hoc meetings, somebody compared this to, I think maybe it was Lonnie. Were you? No, you're not in that. No, it was, anyhow. I don't want to steal their thunder, that we have the menu of options in the report. And now what does the community have an appetite for? And so those conversations need to happen.
And if I can add one thing, and then I would love the ad hoc to talk about this, is that we also have to keep in mind that, you know, one of the recommendations is the MAC actually gets more authority, right?
Gets what?
More authority is in the report itself, right? So then that puts us in a weird spot as a body, because we have an interest, I don't know if it's less authority or more than we might want, but then we have an interest in there too, so it gets tricky. And so I think this, my opinion, is the suggestion of all of us have communities that we can talk to and engage in, and then we can have another meeting and talk about what we found, right? But I don't think we're in a position to recommend. That's just my 2 cents. Anyway, ad hoc. Anything to add?
I think Patty is going to speak.
Okay. Patty?
I will. Patty, if you unmute yourself, you can now speak.
Okay, hello, everybody. Interesting meeting. It's going long. And
before you get started, you just had the statement about being an alternate and attending for this item.
right, that's what I was about to do. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Patty Clare. I'm an alternate, and I'm only speaking now because I'm co-chair with Spencer of this ad hoc. And what I'd say is the most important thing that we concluded is that this should not be a MAC endeavor. This should be or a MAC committee, or like Debbie just said, or a subcommittee, that the MAC should figure out how best to join other voices and continue the dialogue and just not let this all die. But we should not be seen, both for the Brown Act and just for the optics, as sort of trying to run this. We came up, I think, with great ideas to propose to sort of a community-wide. I guess I differ a little bit with Debbie that I think it ought to be community by community having its own working group. I think the start, and I think that our group believe that the start is to try and do a lower Russian River working group to tackle some of the real substantive work that has to be done before anybody could propose a solution for any one of our areas. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway from our discussions. But we did come up with, and it's in sort of the second page of what's in your agenda, of things that a working group ought to undertake. And hopefully that working group would include MAC members. Spencer, I'll toss it to you as co-chair.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think we were formed because we didn't want to let this process die as an ad hoc. And we do have the advantage of already having a forum where people are attending and we can organize meetings. But we heard from the community a lot of concern about our conflict of interest and the conflict or the issues with the Brown Act and just the logistics. And so it's going to take community members to organize in a way that they can lead this process. And I think from the MAC, we have to figure out how we can maybe in our communications team link up with the working group, or just, we're going to be talking to them as they have findings that we can report to the community through our meetings. And one thing I do want to say, there is a website, lowerrussianriver.com, that my husband Nick created it's a place that exists now to start signing people up to get information about the governance study. It's community-led at this point. That is one resource. There may be others, but that is a potential starting place that exists now. So yeah, I'm not recommending it as any sort of MAC official. That is just one place I've heard of so far.
All right. Any council member comments or questions?
As a member of the committee, we also talked about engaging the community in such a way that we had a lot of people saying, we don't believe these figures, we don't believe the results, we have a different analysis of how much money there is and where it's coming from. And we talked about finding a way to explain how real the numbers are and educating the community. And that may be, did we talk about putting that on or asking the communications or the engagement committee to deal with that? I can't quite remember where we were on that.
I think that's a working group.
Can I ask you a
I
question
thought
on
there
that?
was a question about the numbers. So you're saying they've now been verified, is that?
No, I think
It's
there
just
is a
that
question.
there are certain people, there are certain members of our community who have come up with a different set of numbers.
Yes.
And sort of engaging people to get everybody on the same page as far as what working with the county to create understanding of where those numbers came from and why.
I think what we, as a ad hoc brainstorm, and what Brian had come up with was like a recommended starting point to lead a town hall that you go through the blue, remind me their
Blue
name.
Sky.
Blue Skies report.
Study.
And do a study group and walk through the whole report and call out questions that are still people have. Outstanding questions and concerns, list them all and organize to find answers that you agree with to those. There are different ways to interpret data. And that's just gonna be something, I think it will benefit community cohesion to at least feel like you've come up with an answer to those questions that feel good to everybody.
And have the conversation.
Yeah.
I would recommend that you reach out to those people before that meeting and understand the source of their numbers. Because coming in
Yeah, we
cold
talked about that as
is not
well.
gonna be good.
I mean, we're not leading, so, yeah, community.
Is there, like, a question on that, is there a way, I know Blue Sky came up with those numbers based on input. If we have the data sources, or there are other places within the county of Sonoma, they can verify those numbers, or maybe 3 different departments might come up with 3 different numbers, right? And even if we have 3 different numbers, we'll know it's somewhere.
Yeah. I think the main assumption that Blue Sky made was that Airbnb revenues were averaged across the unincorporated areas of Sonoma County. And that, in people's minds, skewed our lower Russian River area that probably has higher Airbnb revenues. And that was a particular assumption that Blue Sky made and stated. And I think when people heard what that is, like, what that assumption output, they're like, that output doesn't sound right. And so the question is actually, you would have to contact someone at Airbnb to get more granular location data, because Airbnb doesn't provide Sonoma County with that type of data.
So, Tracy has just reminded me of this. Next month at our meeting, we've been asked to look at some TOT ordinance changes that are coming forward. The way the way we receive that information now as a county is not, it's not set by area. There isn't any way for us to see that data. But other communities that do have in place requirements for that to come in. Our ordinance doesn't require that, so we don't get that. So as a matter of fact, that's coming to the Board of Supervisors in a few months, and we've been asked to bring that vacation rental item and TOT. So the timing really is very nice.
And having that number be accurate is probably, I'm gonna make a wild guess, like I could have told someone that building needs to be leveled. Is it that we are gonna have a higher percentage than what we're probably getting, because of what Spencer was talking about in concentration of Airbnbs in the county. So my question is, if that's the case, and if you guys all agree, it might be a good idea if we had a letter of recommendation to the Board of Supervisors saying that they should really push to get this more granular information.
That would help, I think, the community make decisions on governance.
Well, I think too, that people are making an assumption that, I mean, I'm not saying that we don't get, that we do get the level of TOT money back into the community, but I'm thinking about Healdsburg, Sonoma.
Correct.
And, you know, those are heavy Airbnb communities as well.
And the
So,
coast.
and the coast.
Right.
And the coast, exactly. So, you know, it may not be quite as much as people are.
But it would be good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it would be good to know.
It'll help inform,
It will help us prove to the community about how much money there is.
yeah.
So could,
That's only part of the
Next month, that'll be the
equation,
agenda
because
item.
we Still have to find out.
or we could even
Patty?
write a letter.
As far as what they're going to give back.
Right. Yes.
So are you guys okay if we work on a letter with that recommendation? And we'll figure out between now and then.
Patty, I've had my hand raised for a while.
Oh, okay, hold on one sec, that we would potentially put together either a letter or figure out if it needs to be agendized, other than just to talk about the letter. You guys okay with that? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. I wanted to remind this group that number one, this ad hoc has done its work. And so we're done. And it seems to me that the MAC then needs to decide as a group what to do next. And I want to really emphasize that, yes, what you just recommended is great. It's part of what we recommended that the working group, the broader working group do to drill down on these numbers. And so that we have data we can rely on and not debate about. But I just want the group to understand that our ad hoc is done. And without some sort of vote, I don't think you can move forward.
But what are we voting on?
Whatever you
Okay.
want to vote on, but you have our recommendations. But if MAC is going to continue to do something about governance, it needs to create a new structure or a new committee or something like that. I just didn't want you to overlook that now we're done. I think Spencer.
But I don't think we're saying that the MAC will.
Patty, what I want to clarify from council is that if the MAC forms a group by an action, then it's going to be a Brown acted group.
Yeah,
So the MAC, we can encourage you can encourage the community to form a group, and the MAC members can be available to keep their ear to the ground, pass information back and forth. But if the MAC forms a body, it will be a Brown acted body.
yeah.
So Patty, are you saying that we should say no to that recommendation?
Oh, no,
No.
not at all. I'm just saying that you need to understand that that's the only thing that will happen going forward because our committee is done. If anything more to happen, you ought to discuss it.
Yeah, so the only thing I can think of, and I'm open to ideas here, is that maybe, and it doesn't have to be the same people on this ad hoc, but maybe we extend it for 1 month to figure out how to thread a needle in a way that makes sense for the MAC to bring the MAC recommendation, or in that month period of time, we can't figure out what recommendation that makes sense given Brown Act, given conflict of interest or whatever that the MAC role would be. That's another option.
Yeah. I think the only structure we need to maybe figure out is if the community forms this working group.
Yeah.
And they want the MAC's help, or they want to inform the MAC of some decision that they're working on or need help with, like, who do they contact? Is it just the general MAC? Is it the communications ad hoc? Is it, I don't know, I think it should maybe just be the general MAC, but.
I think they would contact a MAC member that they already know.
Yeah.
Or if they don't already know a MAC member, they could reach out to District 5 or me, and I can find out where they live and put them in touch with their rep.
Yeah, well, let's say, for example, Pip didn't come up with that idea to send a letter of recommendation to Linda's office. The working group did. We maybe, they ask us to agendize this letter of support to get more granular information. Is that generally how the process would go?
I think that for specifically that item, that could grow out of next month's MAC meeting, because that is going to be on the agenda. That's already in the works. So, but I think that community members that meet, if a community group forms and there are questions, you could reach out directly to our staff. If you need more information from the county, we could put you in touch with the departments that could provide that. The county is available for doing that for things. I mean, people do reach out and ask for data, and
it's all about the will of the people. If the people don't want to form a working group,
Yeah.
you know, we're dead in the water.
yes.
So it's not a MAC responsibility, it's the will of the people.
I don't think it can be.
Pardon me?
I don't think it can be.
I think it could be in the MAC's interest to see that there's broad representation. of community members on that body.
If they so.
If they so form. So that would be a place where we
What,
could.
so the MAC would influence who is on that body?
No.
How many? Or how many?
No, it's about doing broad representation, reaching out into our communities, different people involved.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And, you know, you have the communications committee who's put together all of these tabling opportunities. This weekend, people will be tabling. I printed out an English and a Spanish version of the whole report, and then also the summary. And so people who come by that table who maybe don't know about it, you have people who are tabling that, and that's when we say, hey, have you heard about this? Are you interested? And, you know, just doing that all summer long and telling people about it. One of the things that the ad hoc recommended was sort of a did you know campaign, and you know, a one pager with some infographics. So you know, getting something like that so that people learn that this is happening.
Yeah.
And also individual MAC members or MAC members, and you know, from the jurisdictions have meetings in their own communities to spread the word and keep people informed.
We can spread the word, but in terms of the community forming their own groups,
Yeah, we can do
they're gonna
that.
need some guidance.
But we can't do that as a
Yeah,
body.
But how is it gonna happen? So all these people know that governance is an issue. We send them to Lucy, I guess.
You don't want people to contact you about this?
I've got plenty of ideas. I'm a little confused, and maybe I can do it off-site in terms of asking more questions about that, because there are some groups tentatively forming, like a bike-friendly Forestville group who started, and some things left over from town halls, an arts committee, or what does the town want to look like? What does the town want to be?
Yeah.
Is it that kind of a group?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm all. for
And all of them are
it.
gonna have different ideas and different
And they-
interests.
and they're different, yeah, and if you try to just have one group, it's like, I don't care about bikes, I don't care about art or landscaping or whatever. So I'm in the process of hoping to create something that the ideas that came forth in other town halls don't just dissipate in, oh yeah, we had that idea 20 years ago, nobody did anything. Yeah, so.
Well, I think if this group gets together and they act in a vacuum, the community is not gonna accept whatever comes out of it anyway.
Right.
That's right. I think Joe's point is well taken, because I think that some communities have more established groups. I mean, it's like, okay, most folks have a Chamber of Commerce, but that's a particular group. And then like Friends of Villa Grande is a very well-formed group. Now, Friends of Monte Rio is a very well-formed and vibrant group, but that group very judiciously does not take on political issues. So, you know, that's like the major group in town has sort of taken a stance to not, you know, do this sort of thing. So it's like, you know, what other groups are there going to be? And some, you know, like Cazadero is a smaller town, Duncan's Mills is a smaller town, not too many of those towns really, you know, have a whole lot of groups. So that you are very prone to having just one perspective. Because like say, everybody has a Chamber of Commerce, so we'll get a lot of Chamber of Commerce perspectives. But that may or may not, you know, have much to say, much resonance at all with the majority of people.
Okay, go, Michael.
I think Brian Hughes is the one that instituted the whole program. I think it would be up to Brian to really work if he wants to further this cause. It's up to Brian to pull the group together and get it going, not us.
It's not just.
Right.
Well,
Brian was the main, he was the main person 3 years ago. Started the conversation going.
So, you know, you're running into a can of worms. If Brian is running it, he could get everybody who wants incorporation on the group and then be able to start.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. Phil, what'd you say?
I said if Brian is running it, he'll get everybody who's in favor of incorporation. It's free.
I'm gonna bring it back a little bit to, what this body can actually do and not do. I understand all of those issues and I can go through 25 more of them, but, what we've decided so far is that we will put together a letter of recommendation to the board of supervisors on getting better information, number one, and we will agendize that so we can talk about that letter, and it will allow us to talk about this issue in general. Other than that, I don't know, I haven't heard something specific that we can do in between now and the next meeting. So I would encourage everyone on the MAC, if you do think of something where the MAC can get involved or do something that fits all those criteria, we'll talk about it and bring it up.
I guess I'm still not clear. Our whole issue is that we're worried about brownback being everything. Is that's the underlying concern? Because if we brown act, we can go ahead and put together a town hall under a brown act. We're trying to get community into this, right? But if we just say, geez, we want to go out to the community and we want community to form, nothing's gonna happen. And this is probably the best group that we have in the OR to actually spearhead and lead something. Yeah, we got that one thing on our plate that says, hey, we want more power. I mean, that was one of the recommendations. And yeah, there's a potential conflict of interest there. We can certainly help.
So we get crowns.
All the rest.
It's not just the power, it's money as well.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, a couple questions. So I agree with the previous statement. There is a conflict of interest-ish, but that I don't think forming a group or having a town hall or a MAC meeting to discuss this, maybe the MAC meeting could be about forming a community-wide group, is in itself a conflict of interest. I'm curious, how many people feel there is a conflict of interest? Is it one?
I do.
Or two? Okay.
Many community members.
Many community members. Okay, thank you. That's curious. And then taking a step back, the issue around the financial analysis, like the same question. Is this one or two people? Is there any data that they have to back it up? I'm not undercutting any of what those individuals might think, but I'm saying, do we need to go down this road of, I still think the county should get better data, but putting that aside, do we need to go down this road of proving to somebody something that we may not even be able to prove? They might just turn back around and take shots, poke holes in that analysis. So again, not saying it's not important, but I'm trying to understand the scope. Is this a general community feeling that this financial analysis isn't good? Is this just a couple people trying to poke holes in it? I think where we are right now, personally, is not at a place to go back and reanalyze that. I think we're at a place of, hey, everybody, we have this great study. Here's what it is. What do you think? And I think that's where we are. If down the line we need to defend the numbers or look at them again, great, we can do that. But I think that's getting the cart way in front of us.
On the numbers part, I think there is widespread disbelief in the numbers. I think that the way that the county currently collects the numbers, everyone knows they're not right. Right? So if this letter was basically just saying, board of supervisors, please collect data in a way that is fair, equitable, distributed right, so we have knowledge of what the real numbers are. And there are probably a board or two members that are not interested. Or they might be, I don't know, right? Because everyone has their own thing. So I think a letter from us will help in that effort to get something done. My humble opinion.
Because of our relationship with the county, that would be a good.
Right.
going back, can I just address, the appropriateness of, the MAC taking an active role? Ultimately, the MAC doesn't make this decision. It's a community decision. It's a vote by members in the community. And I think we have a two-pronged thing that needs to happen. Information needs to get out. It seems like a lot of people know about this, but not a lot of people know. So an information campaign so that people are aware of it, but then sort of dovetailing into that. And I know there are some people that already have some ideas and interests of things they want to do. Those would be affinity groups. I'm interested in this. And so I think with you as individual MAC members going out into your communities and talking up that this exists, I think that's your all role. And then affinity groups can form from that, and they can form by reaching out to any one of you and saying, hey, I'm really interested in this option. Is anybody else talking about that? And then you could come to me and say, has anybody else told you that this is going on? And then I can help put them in touch with that. And at the end of an information period of time, we can do a survey to actually ask people, are you interested in these things? And then help match them up with each other so that they can start having those conversations.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that like you need a consensus for any of these governance solutions to be decided on. The community has to vote to approve these. And so sure, you might get a bunch of conflicting affinity groups. At first, they are poking holes, are finding answers, they need more information. Hopefully, at a certain point, people get enough information to make what they think is an informed decision. And hopefully a consensus can emerge in the community such that the community, which needs to form a consensus to vote for a consensus, will figure out what it wants to recommend and go for. And it is kind of like maybe what we can do as a MAC is be like, community, this is our recommendation. If we see no progress in some amount of months, like maybe we reevaluate just there is a structural barrier to starting another organized group in this community. I've seen a lot of people be interested in this topic. And this report did just come out. So this is the time that the community would need to like start formalizing an organization around it. If we don't see that, maybe we need to step in at a certain time.
Right, and I'll just say one more thing, is that all of us are MAC members, right? So we do have influence, or we have ways to get to our communities, right? So while the MAC in and of itself might not be the right body, every single person on this, that's sitting around this table can still participate in this process and get your neighbors, I'll go to FRN, I'll ask these guys to come out and give us information. And that's better than these meetings, really, I think.
And we did receive an email, leading up to this meeting, someone who had seen the poster, who was very upset that this meeting, that I don't think they understood that the topic was coming up with, how the MAC is going to engage. I think they misinterpreted it as.
Come up with a solution?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And said, why do all these things take place in bureaucratic, formats where, and they didn't say, but public comment is very awkward and it's not as engaging as it can be if it's just a community.
And you have to get on an X.
And you have to stand on the table.
Philip.
Well, get on your X.
X.
Yeah. Otherwise you don't get interpreted.
Guys. So, maybe because I've been watching Breaking Bad lately, I'm way behind the loop, I know, but I'm thinking about chemistry. In chemistry, there's a thing called a catalyst, which allows a reaction to happen, but isn't part of the reaction and then goes away. So if the MAC can't be that because of Brown Act, et cetera, then I suggest finding some other organization that's a neutral organization, not one that has a position, to be the catalyst or the clearinghouse, whatever you call it. And I'm not sure what that organization is. There is RARA, which is a coalition of 30 organizations which is working on the plan for the, the community spaces, the community center, and the community park over by the park and ride in that area. So they have no position. It's a coalition. I don't know if they're willing to take on another project. But at the moment, the community, I agree, the community, a lot of people either don't know what's going on, or they're very confused. They have reactions like you saw. And when I inquired, I was told the MAC is the place to go. So anyone that does know is coming here. So if you guys sort of drop the ball and then the community has to organize, the community doesn't know how to organize. Someone has to be the catalyst. Someone has to be saying, here's the information. Here's how you do it if you want to create groups. And we're the clearinghouse. We have no position. We're not, we're just putting people together. And so I think that what I would suggest is finding the appropriate group. It could be rah-rah. I don't know, maybe the Rotary, as to the chamber, they're representative businesses. If there's an appropriate group in saying, hey, we can't be the clearinghouse because of these Brown Act requirements. Are you willing to take this over? Just to form these groups and be a communication center, not to advocate for anything. No, that's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, does anyone, go ahead, Tony, last comment on this, because we are running here.
Oh my gosh, last comment. This is a big deal, you guys. The person who emailed Philip, what he said, this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. But what I do know is my gut's telling me that you guys were put here to do this very thing. To bring the Board of Supervisors and anything else to us, because a lot of us are hardworking people. We don't have time to read through the governance study and understand what it means. I don't. But what I can do is I can lean on you folks to help me make that decision. Help me get my people in Casadero and Duncan's Mills together to be able to make that choice. Because there's gonna be consequences. I mean, and I don't think they talk about it. We're losing our autonomy every day out in Casadero and Duncan's Mills. We're getting gentrified and big interests are taking over. And this governance study, it really feels like that. So when we said, Matt, can we create you? We created you for that reason, to represent us, to advocate for us, to speak for us, to read the governance study and give us the advice we need so we can make informed decisions.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Okay, we are gonna move on to Gurnville Plaza.
Yeah.
And maybe. Go fast, yeah.
I'm not gonna read what I wrote. That's a good start.
Okay.
But I will say that one thing is certain, we talked with Brian, in fact, about, he's interested in the project, he can help move it forward, he knows how to do that. But it's gonna take a very long time.
Yeah, yeah, we know that.
And in order to satisfy the current needs and some of the groundswell to create a new environment there, even without the major final change, we'd like to recommend some interim changes. And I would like to agendize that so that at the next meeting we can discuss that and get the will of the MAC.
I missed one word, something changes.
Interim.
Interim changes, okay.
Okay.
Wait. I read yesterday that open space contributed $1 million to Dyserville for their, so open space has funding available for this type of remodeling for a plaza. I was unaware of until yesterday.
Will the committee have recommendations for
Yes.
interim changes?
Yeah.
So this would be part of your report next month, or do you want a separate agenda item?
I'd like an agenda item so that the MAC can discuss it, decide whether they want to advocate it to the district.
We can take action on reports,
Okay,
so,
that's fine.
okay.
Okay. Anyone have, everyone okay with that? Yep. All right, community stewardship. What is that?
That's.
That's the old cleanup.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what I'm doing here.
That was every time, that was trash on.
Oh, okay, all right, the name change.
And now we're not an ad hoc anymore, we're a.
The garbage people are up.
We're not just doing garbage anymore.
Sorry.
Well, no, we have a recording there, so I thought that was spoke very well to
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Anyone have questions on that? I got confused of the nomenclature change.
We'll
Sorry.
keep reminding you, don't worry.
Anyone? Okay. Anyone in public have any questions on the community stewardship project? Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.